Welcome to another roundtable on the Cryptowriter channel. I'm pretty excited about this one. Corey's pretty excited about this one. He's here in the ether, wherever, somewhere there in the background. See, I'm not making this up. We've got a really good episode planned today. I hope. We're going to be talking about EOS, recent things that have been happening, funding things. We got a really good cast of characters here, so I'm super excited. I'll just go. Me? I think it might be you. Yeah, sorry.
No, I hear it too.
You hear it too. Is it me? I don't think it's
No,
me.
I don't hear an echo.
I'm good.
All right, okay. So let's just...
It sounds like 5 people talking at once.
I don't hear that.
Yeah, no echo here.
Sounds great on my side. Mine's good. I had it playing in another window. So many windows open.
There it is. We literally called that the Jimmy, so you're fine.
Okay. So I'll go around the room and just quickly, I think most of you have already been on a Cryptowriter Round Table, so most of the people out there should know who you are. Of course, I'm Jimmy, and Corey in the background. We host this roundtable. There's Chris Barnes, who you probably know from Eden, the first Eden, the second Eden, the first official Eden. He's been doing lots of different things, interviewing people, pushing that whole thing forward. Luke Stokes, who's no stranger to this channel, or any channel really, been in the game, been in the space for quite a long time. Daniel Keys, who is the CEO of EOS Nation, one of the hardest pushing block producers probably, for a really long time in the EOS space. Crypto Blood, who does a couple things. He's part of EOS Detroit, but also he has been hosting a little show himself for a few years now, called My Two Satoshis, I believe, and interviewing people from all over the space. Big fan of ESIO technology, but it goes beyond. And Chaney Moore, who's a part of Cryptowriter, but again goes way back in the day into the EOS community from early days. Was on a lot of roundtables and panels discussing things up and down in EOS. So welcome to the show. I want to talk about a bunch of things, but I had an idea brought to me, and I thought this is actually a really good idea, and maybe some of the topics here might be a little bit touchy. So for those people in the audience, I thought it's a good idea just to start by asking people, what their affiliations are in the EOS space, just so that people know, kind of what perspective they're coming from. So I can start. I'm Jimmy. I work with the media arm of Jenner EOS, which is a small block producer on the EOS mainnet and a bunch of other EOS.io chains. I also work with Corey in the Uplift and Blue with Legend and Yoshi Drops. It's in terms of funding, I have absolutely zero affiliation with any funding projects other than participating in one Eden election. That's it for me. Do you want to maybe let's just go clockwise? Chris, why don't you introduce yourself, and if you have any affiliations to declare now or forever hold your peace.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks for having me. I love your cup. So Chris Barnes. I'm Eden's the biggest affiliation to speak of, but I will mention that I am actively pursuing an opportunity to work on the Helios team. And part of my ambition, and the reason I do that, is to allow Helios to fulfill the social contract that should be tied to those tokens.
Beautiful. I guess next, my name is Luke Stokes. I'm the managing director for the Foundation for Interwallet Operability. FIO Protocol is a usability layer that's EOS.io based. We've been working on this since 2018. The chain launched last year in March. Also connected to Roundtable Media, which is a media company with Brock Pierce, James Heckman, and David Bailey from BTC Media. There's also another project I'm being attached to called Waterfall, waterfall.foundation. It's an EVM DAG. So that I've also been involved in Steam and Hive and consulted on various projects. So kind of got a lot going on. That's what I'm up to at the moment.
You're going to need a clone, Luke.
No, actually, I'm building an entire DAC. I have over a dozen people in a Discord to do exactly that. I'm actually learning how to clone myself through a group of people that are aligned philosophically and spiritually and everything else. And it's actually freaking amazing. It's only been going for about 4 weeks. I'd love to chat more about it. Pretty cool.
Very cool. Chaney, do you want to go next?
Yeah.
Just go around.
Sorry. I gotta tell you, like Luke, I totally need to like copy whatever you're doing on that score.
You were not the first to say this. It's actually really phenomenal. People are like, dude,
Yeah.
if you figure that shit, like you figure that out, you let me know because I
Right.
need to know
Well,
stuff.
and it seems like such a natural thing, but we'll talk about it out there because that just sings to me. Good job.
Chaney Moore, Cryptowriter. As far as affiliations go, we did receive a grant via Finney from the EOS Network Foundation in the sums of $100,000 and tier 2 grants that were given out. So no affiliation, no strings tied to that, nothing of that nature. I'm also involved in the DAP account DAO and who's created eCurve and several other initiatives there as well. So no direct ties to Helios or B1.
I actually I forgot one that I should probably mention. I'm also on the board for the ETA, the Emerging Technologies Association, which is the service entity for Casper Labs that made a grant to the DevX DAO, which, you know, if you're familiar with Timothy Lewis and is a member of the EOS community from the beginning, kind of was working pretty heavily with the Casper team. So unpaid position, but I'm technically on the board to help that DAO be a success story.
Yeah, I won't even get in unpaid positions.
Isn't that like, yeah, that used to be most of crypto, right? Now things are starting to change, which is nice, especially in EOS. But Crypto Blood, Jerry.
So Jerry Rucker, also known as Crypto Blood, managing director of EOS Detroit. We block produce for 6 EOS IO chains. Of course, EOS, FIO, Luke's chain, Wax, and a couple of others. But those are our affiliations at this point. I still keep an open mind and speak how I feel. So you'll get the real from me tonight or today.
Sweet. And Daniel, last but not least.
Yeah, Daniel Keys, CEO of EOS Nation, been top block producer. Been spending a lot of my time on Pomelo recently. Block One was gave us a grant to develop Pomelo, and EOS Network Foundation is a matching partner for season 1. So I guess those are the 2 affiliations I can declare.
And I guess we should ask Corey too. I didn't ask him because I know, but yeah, Corey, go for it.
Yeah, I'm not affiliated with any EOS-based projects right now, but I have been spending a ton of time thinking about the how, not the when. Uplift is going to need an iteration there. Blue DAC is going to need an iteration there. I am associated with the this actually just started. It's the fan club for literally every one of the people on this call. I'm running that, and yeah. I was telling, like, ordinarily I would just skip these things, and Jimmy was reminding me who was going to be on this morning. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to show up and hang out in the corner and listen to all these brilliant people. And I can't, like, the amount of energy and buzz, guys, that started to crop up around EOS, which is something that, I know everybody on this call, we all knew it was possible. And, you guys and people like Yves LaRose and others are just now just making it happen. And it's literally, like, it's inspiring to see, because, I mean, that was kind of always the thing, right? Like, we're no longer waiting for anybody to do anything or whatever. People are just taking the resources that are at hand, figuring out how to collaborate in, new and frankly kind of magical ways, and getting crazy shit done really quickly, right? And that's just, it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, so collaboration, that's a good place to start, I guess. I mean, because for a really long time there was nothing, and then things started to happen, right? And things just started to snowball, and all these different things kind of started to snowball, like, at the same time. It's this massive avalanche, right? I guess the first thing that happened was, we could probably go back as far as, Dan leaving Block One, and then that Eden thing happening and the community getting a little bit of money there. And then, of course, the EOS Network Foundation, from the former CEO of EOS Nation, that started under Eve, and those guys started, funding a bunch of projects and releasing some core, funds out into various sectors, first media, then, exchanges and things like that. And, shortly off of the back of that was, announcements about this new quadratic funding platform that we have in Pomelo. and the matching that's going to kind of happen there alongside the EOS Network Foundation. And then last week, we woke up to a report by Luke Stokes about Block One, basically, having a whole ton of EOS that was basically being taken over by Brock Pierce for a platform or a project by the name of Helios, which I mistakenly tagged as the wrong thing because it didn't even exist as a Twitter thread yet. It was this new. There's lots of things, tons of things happening in the EOS space. I don't know where to start, but maybe we can just start with going from zero to everything. What's your take? Obviously we're in the mix of it. We're in the center of it. It seems like it's really exciting. But I guess my major question is the rest of the world paying attention yet? Or are we still in our own echo chamber? That's my first kind of thought. I mean,
I guess I could touch on that. I would say we're definitely in an echo chamber. And yet one of the ideas, so I got to have conversations with Brock kind of leading up to this thing. I'm out in Puerto Rico, and he and I got to know each other a little bit over the last couple of years working on various things. I got to go to, El Salvador and Honduras and Panama with him. And so he was discussing this prior to this decision. So I was kind of like, holy moly, that's a big deal. And, just privately talking about it. And part of that discussion, I think we had hour something call, and then that weekend, and then the big meeting we had on Monday when it all got actually happened. It was the talk of, and I put this in my post. What are the regulated cryptocurrencies in the United States that actually have on record an actual court hearing case of some type with the SEC involvement that says this is a legit not security? And
EOS is one of them.
From what I understand, you're looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and EOS. And I've asked, and someone's like, well, what about Dash? I was like, okay, example, public? They're like, well, no, not really. There's been no publicly declared with a court case, to show that. So I think that's really interesting. I think there's the potential that a product like that could be available to retail investors and traditional investors in ways and structures that we haven't ever seen before. I think Brock has connections from a legal perspective and otherwise that are very interesting. And my understanding is he's essentially, got the handcuffs off in a way. He doesn't have to get permission from Block One to do whatever. And I think he's been public about this in Telegram and elsewhere that he purchased those tokens. It wasn't just here you go. One of the largest checks ever, a big deal. So I look at all that to say echo chamber today, but tomorrow, next year, it might be interesting.
It's funny you say that because that was one of my reasons for being bullish about EOS after that whole SEC thing. And I used to say that a lot on my channel when reporting crypto news. But you have to look at the flip side. So that being the case, why are we falling from a market cap perspective so low with that type of thing behind EOS, that clearance within the United States? I think it just points to a lack of direction, right? Within the community, and maybe that's changing. It seems to be changing, but I think that's a huge thing. That should really be valued within the crypto community, and it's not being. There's a reason for it too.
Not yet.
If they're not talking about it now, I think they certainly will be. I think of all the EOS has the coolest origin story of all the blockchains out there, maybe besides Bitcoin.
Wait, you got to explain that because I hear cesspool discussions about Block One and EOS origin story. So Daniel, please enlighten me.
And that's part of what makes it so interesting. I think it's like that we went through that, and now we're emerging as the only blockchain I know of with a foundation that's elected by the token holders, who can say that that the network is in negotiations with the founders. On behalf of the network, we've elected the foundation, who is now in the process of negotiating to try to come to a resolution with this history, and it's all comes from the token holders.
Yeah, very exciting, no doubt. It's a very twisted past. And it's not ending anytime soon, the drama in EOS. It seems like there's just more of it every day. This is worse than the days of our lives, as far as I can tell. Or better, if you like.
Or as the world turns.
Or as the world turns, yeah.
Definitely, cracks me up a little bit because we've seen a lot. Like I want to focus on like the now and present, but we've seen a lot of people, leave the space. Like, and especially like Chaney, like some of the people that used to hang out with and do streams with a lot, like a lot of them are gone now, right? Like I remember back in the days we used to be on the EOS radio streams, and then we had the EOS New York who kind of got incorporated into Block One, and now they've left. They've wished us our best, and they're kind of gone, to other pastures. And I read something. It's like, I mean, even Luke, right? Like you're more involved with other chains, or Corey and I are more involved with other chains than we have been with EOS, right? And so I think it's interesting because I read something on Twitter the other day that said, the EOS might be the only blockchain that the people can say they really are in it for the tech. they went through so much shit, and if they're still here, they probably really are in it for the tech. So I think that's quite an interesting point. Michael, EOS USA, welcome.
Make a point.
Yeah.
Only Kevin Rose, to my knowledge, has left Block One. I don't believe the rest of the EOS New York team has left
thanks.
Block One.
Thanks for clarifying
there.
that.
But you can't. You talk about the history. You can't move forward with that, at least from in the past. So there's some of that involved there, Jimmy. But yeah, things have changed.
Yeah. And Michael, sorry, we started the show by declaring any affiliations you might have with any funding that's happening in EOS. Do you have any?
I was here the whole time. You just left me in the lobby.
Yeah, well, that's what you get for being 1 minute late. Sorry, man. I'm really sorry. I totally didn't see you. I figured you would be late because you had a fire to put out or something. I'm just used to
No, actually, I was up all night training my new node admin that works third shift. But, so yeah, I'm Michael Bonin. I'm the CTO for EOS USA. We're one of the block producers that likes to run all of the EOSIO chains, like Blood had said. I don't know. I mean, that was EOS, Telos, Wax, Proton, FIO.
Yeah, buddy.
Or go in Jungle and Kylan and all that, right? Those are the best. Anyway, so let's say I love running EOSIO. Fell in love with it, whenever we launched way back in 2018. May not realize it, but yeah, we've been around since the launch. We were just way at the bottom of the list where everybody else was at the top. So been a long, fun ride, and really excited to kind of see things ramping back up and kind of riding the tanker ship, as I keep saying, is the things that we were hoping we were wanting to do. Now maybe we've kind of got a little bit of traction to do it.
Fair enough. Yeah. So Daniel, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we can jump over to you for just a quick moment, because I'm assuming that everyone knows, but just in case there's someone in the audience that doesn't, can you maybe explain just a little bit about Pomelo, the quadratic funding model, and how it kind of ties into the EOS Nation funding as well? Because I think that might be kind of important going forward.
Sure, yeah. So Pomelo is a crowdfunding platform on EOS, very heavily based off of Gitcoin. If you're familiar with Gitcoin on Ethereum, it's a quadratic funding platform that basically anybody can submit a proposal for a grant. As long as it's a public good, it will qualify. And then anybody in the EOS community can donate to that grant. And those donations are matched using a quadratic formula from a matching pool of funds that we have, for season 1 that's provided by the EOS Network Foundation. And the magic of the quadratic formula is it's a way to democratically distribute public funding. So, for example, 101 EOS donations will get much more of the matching allocation than 100 EOS donation. So it's in order to be successful as a grant on Pomelo, you have to attract the support from a wide range of the community. So the idea there is, this is the mechanism to give the people the opportunity to decide how funding is directed. Where the foundation is sort of they're kind of directing grants from the top down to the opportunities that they can see from where they're standing, a very high level. Pomelo is the opportunity for us who are down on the ground day to day, working, finding finding the opportunities that are maybe not so visible to the, for example, the foundation or the VCs like Helios. So we see Pomelo. It's not as much like the power of Pomelo for me is not the opportunity to get funding. It's the opportunity to start building that reputation in the community. So it's, you can get some funding. You'll get, a share of that matching pool. But I think the real value is building a reputation season over season through Pomelo, getting more of that community support, getting an opportunity to maybe test out some wild ideas that would have not been funded, if you tried to pitch it to a VC or directly to the foundation and its infancy, might not have gotten anyone's attention. But through Pomelo, iterating season over season, getting a little bit of support every season and enough to prove that you're onto something, there's an opportunity to get that attention and get some more funding from all the other funding mechanisms out there.
Question for you, Daniel. I was just briefly looking at the document that explains how it works, and I didn't see a mention, I may have missed it, on Sybil attacks. And I know like Kevin and Owaki at Gitcoin and this stuff, they've been doing quadratic stuff as well, and it's just an ongoing issue. How are you guys solving that? Is Eden part of that at all, or how do you do KYC? How do you prevent this decentralized distributed individuals get to have a weight that's interesting because of quadratic voting, but preventing Sybil attack? And Sybil attack, for those who don't know, is like one person pretending to be 1,000 people, and they run a bunch of bots, sock puppet accounts, and they all vote together.
Yep. Yeah. So that's the trickiest problem to solve with quadratic funding is how do you make sure that they actually are unique contributors? Because there's a huge incentive to create lots of accounts and attack essentially to try to get a larger share of the pot, essentially. So it is something that there's multiple levels of Sybil resistance and from multiple angles. So for example, we're reviewing every application. That's one, and grant applicants who are successful and receive matching funds need to do KYC. That's one. It's not going to stop Sybil attack, but it's it's a barrier to entry as an attacker.
When you say KYC, that's like a legal entity. They're checking your legal document. This is not like the KYC that we have now with Eden, which is completely community based.
Right.
Okay.
And this is only at the end of the round if you are successful in getting funded and you want to claim your matching pool. In order to be able to claim your matching allocation, you'll have to go through KYC. Any of the donations that are being done currently directly from users to the grant, those go directly to the grant owner without any KYC. That's one layer. We've got everyone so you have to create an account. We created what we call EOS Nation login. It's like a single sign-in account. You log in with social, and you got to link that account to your EOS account in order to make any donations. So that's another layer. We're making sure you can't just create a million EOS accounts and donate with EOS. You have to first create a Pomelo account. We have some controls in place to help limit how many of those accounts you can create. Not perfect, but the goal we have is keep raising the difficulty level. The more and more difficult you make it, the harder it is to make lots of these accounts. We're working on additional things like trust bonuses. So you'll be able to link multiple proofs of uniqueness to your EOS Nation login eventually to increase the weight of your vote. So we can imagine a future where the people with the most weight will dilute the people who have not done that matching or that trust bonus. So Eden is one way that we're exploring to, you can increase your trust score by linking your Eden account as your payment method. That gives you extra weight. There are solutions out there like tap your, there's a grant there on Pomelo, you might have seen Port, which allows you to tap your passport to prove that you have a unique passport without actually exposing the private data. So basically we put a flag on your account saying, yes, this person has a unique passport. Doesn't mean it's not the friend's passport, but again, it's another And we're the team who built EOS Detective. So we're also monitoring on chain. I think in that regard, we're behind a lot of, like, Gitcoin has been running. They're on their 12th round. We have a lot of work to do to get up to feature parity with them, to build up a lot of our Sybil defenses to the level that they do. I think maybe our on-chain detection is one area where maybe we're on par or maybe more advanced than them. And there's a lot of things that, again, with our years of experience with EOS Detective, and there's a lot more on-chain computation that's possible on EOS that's not on Ethereum. So we have some advantages in what we can track on chain. So we're watching for evidence of Sybil, and at the end of the round, we're going to be publishing a report. So there's been one project where there was immediately detected in our on-chain monitoring. We continued monitoring it. We were receiving reports from other users, and we had to disqualify the HUFI grant because we could see that they were paying users to vote for them, and we could see the on-chain. This user votes, they get paid directly for that vote, and we could see it all, and then we had people reporting, screenshots of them advertising this kickback. It's in the rules. You can't pay for votes. So we depend on so in that case, we didn't disqualify them as soon as we saw evidence in our Sybil detection. It was a combination of, okay, we see something here. Okay, we're getting reports from the community. So we're building up kind of this immune system in Pomelo over time, round over round, that involves the community being our eyes, watching for things and reporting. And there's incentives in place, as a grant owner. If someone is cheating the system and they're taking part of your allocation, so all of the participants have an incentive to self-police, and we've been seeing we've been getting a lot of the community involved in helping us self-police. But like I said, yeah, it's by no means we haven't solved Sybil yet, but we're making it harder and harder every round is the goal.
So why not use Eden for it? What's the?
So we plan to use Eden. One of the design principles we were going with season 1 was making sure that it's fully accessible to the entire EOS community. We wanted to make sure that the Eastern participants have an equal opportunity to have an influence over how the matching distribution is. And we don't currently have a Chinese or a Korean or there's right now really the Eden is predominantly a Western entity, and we wanted to make sure that there's equal opportunity for everybody. So I envision, or I see, it looks like there's progress being made in establishing more geographic, multiple Edens, and I think that's going to help a lot. Allow us to leverage that Eden Sybil defense or proof of humanity or proof of uniqueness in a more accessible way.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So I have a question for Chaney, if that's okay. I remember way back in the day, you were often quite critical about the fact that Block One wasn't giving funding; they weren't doing anything. I'm kind of, I've had this discussion with Chris Barnes before about the funding that goes through Eden on EOS, and I guess there's a way to take it away if they're not holding up their end of the bargain. But now, are you at all concerned that some of this funding might be misdirected like it was with Block One and end up in projects that aren't even building on the EOS main chain? I just kind of wondering that.
I briefly mentioned history earlier. Yeah, I'm sure Block One has done some good things. I guess the most recent is they did fund EOS Nation with the creation of Pomelo. I haven't seen anything recently about them coming out with a matching grant. I think that was originally proposed. At some point, I remember hearing about them providing some additional funding to Pomelo. Man, I don't even know where to start with that question, Jimmy. To be quite honest with you, I personally believe that the vesting tokens had a social contract associated with them, and that social contract it involved the support of the EOS network. I could go back and get into the details of $1 billion EOS VC fund and other things as well that were said, but we won't. So let's just focus on Helios then, and maybe Pomelo. Daniel, has B1 provide any input to whether or not they're going to provide additional matching funds for Pomelo anytime soon?
I'll have to let them speak for themselves.
Okay. First round ends in about 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay. So, well, we should know something in 2 weeks, whether it's a yay or nay. I think they originally had intended to do something. Haven't seen it now. Who knows? Maybe the discussions at the end of the foundation have slowed that down. But no, I'm not particularly pleased with the way B1 has supported the communities the last year and a half publicly, funding publicly. The $50,000 grants were nice to about 72 projects or so. So about 3.6 million. Pomelo, I believe, was about $600,000 grant. They've supported the EOS IO code in one of the recent bullish promotions. They basically said B1 will be sending all of the EOS IO dev work to bullish, and we'll see how that goes. B1 is becoming a holding company for the most part. They're holding voice, they're holding bullish. They don't have employees. They haven't done anything recently that really gets me excited or makes them trustworthy. To be honest, PBE didn't even last a year, Jimmy. I mean, PBE was announced in March of 2020, and it was dead before March of this year, and no one told us for 6 months that PBE was dead and that they were working on bullish. We didn't know that B1 was going to sell vested tokens, 37 million vested tokens that don't fully invest for seven years, which was there to align incentives. Now we can talk whether or not Brock will do better things with those tokens than B1. Yeah, I absolutely believe he can do better things with those tokens than B1. Whether it's a legal framework, whether it's the people there, I'm sure he can do good things. And it's a great point that he can do those good things. But Block 1 took a stake and they slapped it on a garbage lid and said, here you go, community. Here are the tokens back via Block 1. We sold these tokens. We got more money, community. We don't know exactly how much Brock paid for those tokens, but I don't think that it should have been anything of material value going to Block 1 of additional value when those tokens were intended for the support of the community. My 2 cents. I'll be quiet for a while.
One
Hey,
clarification I'll make on
sorry.
the I guess the grant from Block 1, the 631K, 240 of that we're still waiting for.
Oh, it had to be proven, had to be up and running.
It's based on milestones. So
Sure. Good.
We've been paid for the first milestone, which was a portion of that.
I think that's smart.
So Luke, with the exception of the clickbaity title, which I actually loved, I thought that was brilliant. You came out quite quickly and wrote an article. And I mean, anyone who's followed you or knows you know that like you're not afraid to be critical of Block 1. You have been in the past. You're not afraid to be critical of EOS. To like you speak your mind, right? And for me, I actually respect a lot of your opinions, even if I don't agree with them. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, for the simple reason that you're still kind of like using EOS.io technology to build in the space, right? Like you're still a champion of the technology, and you're still here, you're still a member of Eden. So, but if you haven't read that piece that Luke wrote. I definitely think that you should read it, whether you agree or whether you disagree. I think you brought up a lot of points. But in the end, you kind of suggested that maybe you were in favor of this whole thing. I think that was kind of what I got from it. Do you want to maybe explain why to people who might not have read it or to other people on the panel?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, so the post we're talking about is, did Block One just rug pull, the EOS? And the idea is the reason for the clickbaity title was for those who think it's a resounding yes. I wanted them to be like confirmation bias. Woohoo! Let me, read something that I agree with. And the first part of the article kind of walks through why Block One kind of screwed us a bit. And the intention was, I hear you. You have valid points. And if I did a whole post a while back about has the EOS community reached its tipping point? There was another kind of like trying to create that separation between Block One and EOS. Block One is not EOS. When I hear from people going, well, EOS just sucks because they got $4 billion. What did they do with it? I'm like, no, EOS got nothing. We've literally been in a desert, wanting a cup of water, and Block One got everything. And whether or not they delivered something of value, that's to be seen, right? So the article kind of starts pretty critical, but then kind of goes into, like we just talked about earlier, the potential that EOS has, and the idea that for Brock to make such a large commitment, a 7-year commitment, with his personal finances, a really big check, essentially. Like these type of things start to create an interesting story. The regulatory nature of crypto in the space, where are things going with the infrastructure bill that's just passed? I mean, it was literally like a Wednesday or a Thursday where people's like, holy frick, this is the most dangerous thing that happened to our whole space, and it's going to pass on Friday. And I'm like, anyone paying attention? They're like, oh, it won't pass. It's totally unconstitutional. There's no way it passed. And like, I still don't see people talking about it. They added a line that said, and, digital assets, which basically just screws our whole industry. And if you haven't looked into that, it's really freaking scary. You do NFTs, you do anything over 10 grand. Just across the board, it's go to jail, go to jail, go to jail. So we're facing a pretty serious uphill battle from a regulatory perspective. And I had, like I said, a long conversation with Brock about this, and I'm thinking, is this really where the industry is going? Are we really becoming regulated? I didn't get into this industry to participate in something like that. And he made some good points as far as like, yes, game theory dynamics, prisoner's dilemma to defect is super valuable. And, I think ultimately we win. That's how the story plays out. And yet, if we lose the United States as a symbol of freedom that it's been for hundreds of years, like that makes our efforts really difficult. And yeah, we could go to El Salvador or Honduras or Panama, all these different places we're visiting in South America, but like they're tiny, tiny economies that don't have impact on the world stage like the United States. And so there's really been nobody fighting for good rules from a regulatory government perspective. And no one from our industry is creating lobbies and like pushing this direction. Just doing some interesting stuff in Wyoming with DAX and DAOs, but it's the idea that if we're moving this direction, we need some champions in the space that are well positioned politically. Obviously, Brock is. We need people that are well funded. Obviously, he is. We need people that are committed. Obviously, he's demonstrated that. And so I'm more optimistic than I ever have been. And as you guys know, I worked with Brock for like 6 to 9 months trying to do the EOS Foundation DAO, and it was too early. And it was also just Dan Larimer was still at Block One. Block One didn't want to do a DAO, and the community treasury or the community token support wasn't there. They didn't want to battle the behemoth. And I remember those calls where it was literally like, okay, we could be the Rebel Alliance against, the evil empire who's in. And frankly, the token holders balked. They're like, no, we're not going up against $5 billion. We're not going to do it. Now, here we are X number of, months and years later, the winds of change have happened. Dan Larimer is no longer there. Pretty much everyone I know personally that is at Block One has left. Or is leaving, or is considering leaving, or whatever, and it's just not a great story for them. So I'm optimistic. I think that the regulatory perspective of what's coming was not in my preview. I wasn't really aware of where we're at, and now that I look at that from a larger perspective, and I step back and go, holy moly, this could get really, really bad. And wow, we have a chip in the game with EOS that we don't really have other than Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I am optimistic. Still not a huge fan of Block One in the leadership. Brendan hasn't blocked me yet on Twitter, I guess. He still follows me. So hopefully some of what I share, he reads and has thoughts on. But I don't know the guy, and I don't know what it's like to manage $5 billion. So I try to keep my judgments to a minimum of individuals, but I try to also put out good assessments. Like this is what's actually what I perceive as reality. And that's what I attempt to do. And I try to do it from a fair perspective. But I'm always open to criticism, feedback, and perspective to say, hey, Luke, here's why you're wrong. And I love that. That's how I grow, And I think as a community, we've never seen EOS well-funded. EOS VC, I mean, they claimed in their post they did 140 something projects. Can you guys name a household brand that came out of that? Does any of those look like a multi-billion-dollar company supported a project, right? I can't think of anything. I thought of, some things that kind of existed before they gave funding and they still exist after funding. And was there much difference? I don't know. Pomelo is a great example. I'm really excited about that. I'm actually encouraged to hear that they did fund that, enable that. That should definitely happen. But going forward,
and there were tons of projects that didn't get funding and that should have, and also like some of the projects that did get funding totally flopped. Like what was that? The EOS Exchange that came out. Like they got tons of funding, and then like they kind of backed out and pulled out. Yeah.
30 million.
I totally hear you. Yeah.
Even some of the logistics around that, if I remember right, and I understand that there's probably some lawyer that felt that way, but if I remember, even those grants said you can't be any affiliation to a block producer, and it was
there's separation. That's correct.
Yeah, it was, and it really complicated it because who do you think are the biggest innovators and the ones you want to fund? And I'm sure there was some legal aspect that said, look, we can't directly fund the block producer, but that single line probably crushed more innovation that was pending from the BPs that were just trying to go. I mean, it was crypto winter.
I've had to work against this in FIO to let the BPs know, like you guys and others, to be like, hey, submit a worker proposal. Like you're doing awesome stuff. The Hey FIO team is doing a really cool project. Like there's a lot of, the domain marketplace that's going on. Like there's really cool projects coming from the community from block producers. And I want to be like, submit a proposal. We have a treasury for this exact purpose. We're a nonprofit to support
Luke,
this activity.
You said that this will, Brock's committed for 7 years. And I will counter that with the standpoint that we thought, and remember, B1 suggested the language that they get $100 million vesting tokens. Remember, I want to say, the block producers that launched the network put that and agreed that was in there. But it was B1 that suggested 100 million tokens be put in the contract, unlocked under 10 years, to align incentives and allow for them to develop EOS.io software for the next decade. I want to be clear about that. It was B1 that came up with the EOS.io code that was launched. Community chose to launch it, but it was there. So incentives were aligned. They were able to sell at least a portion of those incentives. 10 years, 7 years, those tokens can still be sold in their current form. All right. So I want to be clear. There's no milestones there. There's a social contract that I will argue has been broken. And it's no longer valid. And I support at this point, I'd say let's just tweak the code a little bit, change it to where those tokens vest over 1,000 years until they come to the table and let us know what they intend to do for the network. They're still theirs. They're still in their account. They still have control. They've sold them. Well, Brock and the Network Foundation and B1 can negotiate a good outcome. All that's been changed, 10 to 1,000. One little piece of code.
I feel like I'm on repeat. So you guys probably know I was involved with the Steam ecosystem. It's also Delegate Proof of Stake, also Dan Larimer. They ninja mined 80% of the tokens, and they had a social contract. They had a roadmap. They had all these things. They were going to use that 80% of tokens for these purposes. Well, after selling 60% and only having 20% left, certain individual I'm not a huge fan of, let's just put it this way. Dan may not pick great business partners, right? He's phenomenal, a genius, but maybe he's not good at that skill. And so they go and they sell Steemit.com, Steemit Incorporated, and 20% of the tokens to Justin Sun and Tron Foundation, who that same week, votes out a validator on their own network via the foundation tokens, which they said they would never do, and participated directly in governance to control the chain. And so we as a community were like, oh, frick, what do we do? A year before that, somebody put a pull request out to say, hey, what if we fork out their tokens? And it was just a pull request to null the keys of Steemit. And it freaked them out, the Steemit company, so much that the CEO started moving his tokens off chain to an exchange. And you want to send the worst signal in the world about the security and vulnerability of your chain, do that, right? And he did this because he was freaking out, right? Year later, we get this situation with Justin Sun and Tron, and we tried to play nice, and we did a very similar to what you're suggesting, Chaney. We put out eventually a soft fork because as the validators, people are like, look, you need to do something. You're a witness. You need to do something. They're literally going to destroy our value. There was a post on Poloniex about transferring your Steam tokens to Tron, and we're like, what the frick? And so we froze their account temporarily. It's a minor change, exactly like you're describing. And they responded, oh, hey, we'll have a conversation the very next day. 2 weeks from now, we'll have a big town hall meeting. It's all going to be wonderful. What they actually did was, in my opinion, lied to CZ and got him to vote with Binance, Steam tokens, and Sybil attacked the chain and took it over. And it was this chaotic craziness. And we ended up, creating the Hive community out of that. And it was one of the most intense, crazy, ridiculous experiences that I would hopefully not want to repeat. But I'm just saying, like, let's at least learn from history, make sure we understand in similar situations what happened.
So you've met with Brock. Let me correlate that to EOS then. B1 kind of had an idea probably that there were some ideas of being formulated about shutting off the valve, right? And then immediately, well, not immediately, but shortly thereafter, and you say you talked to Brock the weekend before, Helios gets spun up. I've not been able to find any information on the Helios as a company. There were no social accounts. There was nothing. There were no employees. We have a Google form on Twitter where they're trying to have employees. And all of a sudden it muddied the water, and it made it not so easy to come in there and turn that valve off. Oh, but guys, after 3.5 years, something good's going to happen here. Block One's going to do something good. We're selling more tokens. We sold 20 million via the bullish SPAC. All right. Already sold 20 million. It's going to go live in the SPAC. We're going to sell 45 more million right here. But it's a good thing, guys. Don't do anything. And so subsequently, you have EOS Nation. I'm sorry, you have EOS Network Foundation. You have B1, and then you have Brock meeting. And supposedly that nothing was worked out. And Eve put in the EOS Network Foundation chat on Discord. If you're not a member, go be a member. That they're having another negotiation to discuss what to do with those tokens. So it sounds very familiar, Luke. It sounds like you've seen this before. History repeats.
It could get bloody. Let's put it that way. And I'm glad that there's open conversations. Like, I was on calls with Justin Sun and his team, and we tried. I back channel email communications even before all the drama happened, and communication just wasn't there. So I'm happy to know they're at least meeting and talking.
To me, it just optically, it just doesn't look good to see B1 trying to fight the community for tokens. It just doesn't look good.
I think it's worth pointing out, sort of, for those who don't know exactly, these 100 million tokens, right? It's not like B1 sprung those on us in the last minute and we were like, oh no, what do we do? It's this last minute decision. I guess we'll just launch the code. The token sale contract that existed for the whole year of that token sale, right at the very end of it in Appendix A, it says 100 million EOS will be reserved for Block 1. Reserved. So reserved means to be kept specially for a particular person or purpose. So this is the social contract piece that we all speak to, right? We all agree with. Dan has a really interesting point about verbal contracts in More Equal Animals. And he says, we eliminate a large percentage of economically pointless contracts when everyone knows that a verbal contract is not enforceable and that the courts cannot create implied contracts. This makes everyone more equal and therefore is a critical component of true democracies. So the contract that matters is the one on the chain. And so that's interesting that we're going to go ahead now and just change that because our feelings are hurt.
It's code that exists on no other EOSI implementation. Is it on FIO? Do you have that on there, FIO?
Well, no. To be clear, we did a similar, and I say we, I mean the community of block producers, including some that are on this call, did agree to have a percentage that go to, basically purchase the IP from the private company that got, funding and built it all out in a very similar model. And that, that company's not as relevant as the foundation that, than all the community. So it's like, basically no one's complained because we got a steering committee. We have a multi-sig of the board. We've managed that, I would say, managed that community treasury well in a way that no one's complaining about the, for example, 4.5 million tokens get minted every month and go into the community treasury. And we're a nonprofit Cayman entity that has a charter to actually promote this and do, fund incentives, pay the team to do, pay the community, the open worker proposals. So it all comes back to layer zero. I talk about this often. Layer zero is the number of people that actually believe your project is valuable. And when Justin Sun did what he did, he lost layer zero on Steam and we moved to Hive. And I think block 1 has lost layer 0 for a really long time. And we're all just mad about it. We had no funding to do anything about it. Now we actually have funding to do something about it.
Yeah, and speaking about the rules on chain, the rules on chain is DPoS, which means 15 out of 21 block producers with the consensus of the token holders can modify the code. Those are the rules on chain.
So I'm going to interrupt for a minute before we go to round 2. It's a great topic. I was under the impression that that the EOS Network Foundation had a conflicting meeting, and they got back to me a little bit late. So Eve, if you are out there in the comments, I thought that you were going to have an invite sent to you from a third party, but I just sent you something in Telegram, so feel free to jump on. Also, I'd like to do some gratitudes before we finish up, so I'm going to do that. Let's see, and I actually don't, funny enough, have build rights in our area, so I guess we'll just do them where I can, which will be on the Jenner EOS server, because it won't let me place blocks in Uplifter's Tower for some reason, which we found out last night.
Don't you know anybody there that can get that shit fixed? Like,
I don't know, man. I filled in a support ticket yesterday, but they didn't get back to me. I mean, to be fair, like, no,
sorry.
Yeah, we changed the system a little bit, so that's fair enough. I mean, I'm torn a little bit. Like, Chaney brings up a really interesting point for me, actually, is that they actually got more money, which I think is kind of funny if you think about it. Like, I think that's something that I didn't really. Sorry, go ahead.
Either money or Brock's equity in B1. It's not known. Brock claims he got a discount. But not
fair.
as much of a discount so there's implied value there, but it's all a black box. But hey, there's one thing that B1 is very good at. It's raising funds, and they continue to do that to the benefit of no one but themselves.
Right, and maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe they'll take all that profit and they'll throw it.
And we'll get hashes from Bullish, and life will be great. And hashes from Voice. It'll be fun.
They'll throw it all back into the community after 3.5 years. It'll be good. Chaney, you're up. Let's start with you. What are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for the EOS Foundation that is supporting the community and standing up for the community.
It's a nice sun. Let's go with Corey. Corey, what are you grateful for?
I'm really grateful that I get to be in rooms like this, frankly. I'll figure out how to edit it down. I'm grateful that I get to swim in deep waters. I mean, like, governance, especially like, all the areas around governance we've been looking into lately, it gets messy as hell. But it feels like the effort that we're putting in and the blood, sweat, and tears that we're putting in, and frankly, that you guys have been putting in for a long time, we're pushing towards an evolution of the way that human beings collaborate. And I think everybody on this call kind of smells that, right? Like we kind of see that around the corner, and a lot more present even now. And that's kind of a big deal, right? Like in human history, this doesn't happen very often, and it's happening now, and we actually get to be part of it. So I'm grateful for that.
Chris?
I am grateful for honest people who choose to act with integrity.
Here, here. Well said, Chris.
You missed the R in Chris's name, I believe.
Yes.
I knew that. I was just testing you out, man.
Close enough.
Sorry, I totally missed it. For honest people who
Yeah, maybe too big. With integrity.
With integ. RITY. Is that right? Says the writer. Who's next? Luke, you're up.
I know it sounds a little weird, but I'm grateful for listening to source and responding. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what I'm feeling today. I've seen some really amazing serendipity lately, and very grateful for that.
Makes sense.
Let's go with Jerry.
Yeah, this week, man, I'm really grateful for the EOS Detroit team. Actually, this past week has been a very busy and crazy, stressful week for us. We actually did a meet the buyer pitch here in Detroit, where there were over 220 applicants and 10 finalists, and we actually took third place. So that's going to open up some doors for us in the local community as far as, you know, doing blockchain consulting and everything in the city and the Metro Detroit area. And we also over the weekend had a 2-day workshop to help artists and musicians and even just entrepreneurs learn about blockchain and NFTs. So it was a great response. The community, the cohort loved it. They learned a lot. And we're just one step further to, you know, our mission of really bringing blockchain on ground in the community, and that's it's been great. So our whole team did a great job. So I just definitely I'm thankful for that.
Cool. And Daniel, Candy Keys, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for this community, and you know that I have the opportunity to collaborate with such an awesome group of people that align with my values. I guess that's the nutshell. You know, bigger than that. Especially, you know, we've got people who've been around for a while. So if you're still here after what we've been through over these years, I think it's more than you're in it for the tech. It's
Sure, yeah.
There's the tech, but there's also like what we all joined this community for in the first place. I think most of us that are still here still really believe in that vision. So I'm just super grateful that I had the opportunity to keep working on making that vision come to life.
Cool. And I think just Michael's left.
Well, and that transitions pretty well. I was going to say I'm grateful for still being in the space. I mean, you know, it's been many, many years that we've been doing this and having fun. You know, a lot of us, this is what we live, eat, and breathe. And I mean, sadly, these are some of my best friends now. You know, I mean, I talk to them as much, if not more, and I am on the same nerve wavelength, probably more so than a lot of, you know, my friends in real life. So, I mean, I'm just excited that, you know, it's been up, it's been down, it's been all around, but
right.
Kind
I
of
have to wake up in the morning and think, man, that Michael guy, I can't believe that guy's my friend.
Yeah.
He takes the piss out of me every morning.
People wake up and use my name in vain, but
no, I agree. I'm kind of in the same boat. You know, I'm grateful to be in the EOS and EOS IO space. Rain or shine. And I'm also grateful that everyone in the audience gets to hear a Japanese ambulance at 12:02 a.m. in the morning. In case you were ever wondering what that might sound like, now you know. I feel like I've been able to enlighten the world with this.
Call that the Wii U wagon. Wii U.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, that's great. Thank you. Let's go back to, you know, the feed of important faces. Yeah, I mean, so I have a couple more questions, if that's okay. And I mean, you know, we've been here an hour. If you got to drop off, that's cool. I'm going to stay just because I got nothing to do tomorrow. wow, and I like you people. So if you want to stay here and hang out and talk a little bit more, because I think there's a lot going on, feel free. But if you have to drop off at any point in time. But I do have a couple more questions. I've one for Chris and one for Crypto Blood. I go with Crypto Blood first. Jerry, you know, I didn't know about you, and then I knew about you, which is kind of cool because like when I found out about you, and then I started watching your channel, right? Like, you give some pretty detailed information. You have one of the few podcasts that I actually can't watch while I drive. Like, I actually have to look at the screen, which, you know, in my mind is very rare. So I don't have that much time, unfortunately. Sometimes I watch your podcast in the bath. That's kind of weird. But, you know, people know about my bath stories on this channel. Anyway, you know, you do a lot of coverage of EOS and EOS.io chains, but you're also, you know, very out there in the broader crypto community. So I kind of wanted to go back on this, you know, like in your podcast, in your travelings, have people, you know, been taking notice of this, like what Luke was saying? Are people, like, it doesn't really seem like there's any FUD around it. Like, you know, I don't know, maybe I missed it, but it almost seems to me like people just don't care. And, you know, I've had you on a stream before where you've been like, okay, I have to represent EOS Detroit, but, you know, today I get to be me and I get to say whatever the hell I want. So I'm just kind of curious.
In what regard? Notice what, Jimmy?
Like, the sentiment about all of this. Are people even paying attention to this Brock Pierce thing? Are people even paying attention to the funding that's coming from EOS Nation or Pomelo? Are people even paying attention to Eden?
No. The broader crypto market, not at all. Not at all. And you know, just kind of to be superficial, I mean, it's reflective in the price of, or market cap, I should say, of EOS token, right? If you just want to make a direct correlation. So if people in the broader crypto space are aware and interested and excited about it, they're going to put their money behind it. Whether it's speculatively or they're actually looking for a value play in the space. So no, I do not think, nor do I see people talking about this at this juncture. So we'll see what happens.
Jerry, I'll say one thing there. The most press I've seen EOS get in the last 6 months was Eve calling B1 a scam. And that hit a lot of different.
But I mean, true, very true, Chaney, very true. But if you look at like how we've dropped, right, in market cap rankings,
46,
40, 47, 46. We used to be top 10. You know,
top
it's
3.
Just top right for a second. So yeah, it's just we'll see what happens, Jimmy. But no, to answer your question, no.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's been paid promotions and stuff, or seemingly like promotions that have went out, you know, on some of the major media channels. So they do pop up in some of my feeds, but it doesn't really seem like people are interacting in the comments. Again, it kind of goes back to that almost like echo chamber. Look, like, we're coming, we're fine, the day is finally here, you know, type of thing. But yeah, I don't notice it, so I like to ask other people as well. So, and Chris, I had a question for you too. We might have jumped ahead, but I wanted to ask it anyway. We might have even blown right by it. But you and I have had conversations about Dan leaving Block One and how it could have went the other way. It could have went the way that he just like left and didn't support the ecosystem anymore. He didn't care about EOS, but that's not really the direction that it went. You know, he's a big part of the first official Eden on EOS election. He was there. He funded, you know, some of the early rounds and things like that. So obviously, you know, from anyone who really cares about the truth, he is still involved. He might actually be more involved now than he was in, you know, when he was a part of Block One. I'm just curious about your take on Brock Pierce, because like he is part of that founding Eden kind of era. But I get the impression that a lot of people kind of felt or feel like he just disappeared and now he's back type of thing. Like he didn't really seem to be that involved. Like what's your take on that? I'm not trying to throw him under the bus by any means. I'm just, you know, that this seemed to be like something that was out there, and I just wonder, like, because you're involved with him a little bit. I think you've had conversation with him around Eden, things like that. You're kind of in that more social scene than I am, at least. So I'm just kind of curious, like, do you think that that's a criticism, or it's nothing?
It's an observation, but I've never spoken to Brock, so I don't know him at all. I only know what everyone else would know from his public engagements. So I think it's interesting. I did notice a Telegram. He had an interaction when Helios was first announced in the EOS main chat, and he made a comment that both Dan and himself are no longer under restrictions of sorts from B1. They're free from B1. So you made the point that Dan left B1 and he is arguably doing more now without being under B1's thumb for the EOS ecosystem by building Eden OS, by setting up Eden, by creating the first true glimmer of hope in this world as I see it in terms of what democracy is and picking our leaders. And now Eden is yet to be even, we've only scratched the surface of what the power of a truly real person layer on a blockchain is. Like, no longer are people hiding behind anonymous names and pseudonymous handles. Like, this is Eden is a real human layer which Pomelo can leverage, and who knows what else is going to leverage.
Some of us like our handles. Wait a minute.
Now you can keep your handle, but at least it's your face, right? Like, it's still you get to be you now, and that's that's cryptographically proven
We had that
on chain. But I'll just finish
my logo, but I get the point.
Yeah. No, but I'll just say one last thing then about Brock. So I don't know him, but if he's free from B1 and he was under some sort of restrictions of sorts in terms of how he could act, we've seen objectively he's done great things for Bitcoin. He has said some really impressive things that, I mean, people can say whatever they want, right? Talk's cheap. And he said something once that to be a billionaire is to affect the lives of 1 billion people, not to make $1 billion. So I like to believe that that's true. And the reason why I'm willing to consider an opportunity within Helios is because that's how I want to live my life. And that's the purpose that I'm here for, is to do something, not just to fill my bags. It's not interesting. So if that's where Brock's alignments are, and I don't know, I've never spoken to him, but it sounds like it could be. And he's done such great things for Bitcoin in terms of being a spokesperson and visiting these other parts of the world to spread the proliferation of Bitcoin. I'm optimistic that maybe he is sincere and he might do the same thing for EOS. So that's a good thing.
I will give you my interpretation of what he meant when he said no longer under B1's restrictions. The reason that comment is the reason I felt like any purchase of the EOS he had from B1 included any equity he had in B1, and I believe that was probably the restrictions he had was some ownership of B1 equity until we see some other information on what that is, or what that agreement was, what he paid, what the consideration was in exchange for those EOS. That will continue to be my belief. In his defense, I mean, he did do some good things, Jimmy. He did have a proxy. He had a proxy on the chain. He had the Brock Pierce proxy. Several other people in the community were involved in that. Keep in mind his wife, Crystal Rose, was also heading up Sense Chat. Honestly, I don't know what the current status of Sense is, but there were still feelers into the EOS community. I'm sure the proxy kind of withered away when he was running for president, and the community managers, I don't believe, were involved there. But he didn't totally disappear. But he was kind of with the newsreel. I can't think of the show that was on back in 2018. When there was kind of a amicable agreement between him and B1 to kind of exit B1 at that time, and he did take a step back from that. What was the TV show? I'm forgetting. Does anybody else not recall that?
It was a John Oliver show.
The John Oliver show, yes. When they talked about EOS during the fundraising, and looked at Brock Pierce's lifestyle, like that was important consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that it'll work out really well. My only concern really is that, again, I like to put, my my positive faith in people, and maybe sometimes this is my downfall, but like, I don't think that you would spend that much money if you weren't going to do anything with it. I mean, so, but again, that's not, like, obviously not financial advice. And this is kind of like a sticking point too, because when you look at Block One, like, they should have done something with it and then they didn't. And now you have somebody who's coming out who's saying, okay, I'm going to do something with it. But like, by this point, there's just so much noise in the space that's going around of nothing ever being done, that like, I'm just kind of standing there waiting for something to happen, and then I'll comment on it. That's like my personal kind of reaction. Like, I'm not expecting it not to happen, but I'm not expecting it to happen. Like, I'm just kind of done, like, waiting for somebody to do something that they promised to do. Thank you, Block One, for that. You toughened me up. But yeah, that's kind of my stance, right? And so like, I don't like, and I know like Genereos on their side, like, I think they're kind of very similar to me in that, on their official stance as well. It's like a lot of people are just kind of waiting to see. Like, there's a lot of things that are happening, a lot of things coming to the fore with the governance, you know, with the EOS on Eden, with the community kind of rallying again. I mean, Chaney, you know, Michael, Luke, and Chris, you guys have all kind of, in a way, been here since the beginning. And have you seen the community rallying this much since like the early days of the first year kind of voice announcement, right? Again, that has nothing to do with voice, because we don't even know where voice is. Apparently lost their voice somewhere in the mix there, porting towards NFTs because they heard that that's hot. I'm sorry, I'm throwing shade. It's that time in the evening, but I got to drag it on my can, so it's okay. But you know,
I did actually meet with Salah in New York at the NFT NYC event, and we had some good conversations with him about voice and kind of, you know, obviously certain things that can be discussed more publicly and certain things that can't. But ultimately, a lot of the problems we run into, from my perspective, have to do with the SEC. You know, they try to do a token play with voice, and they, frankly, we're just not allowed. Whereas NFTs have a clearer regulatory framework where they can do some things. And
well,
when I did
because now what you said, like, you know, an hour earlier, did, right? That's the key. Well, they might again, not for very, very much longer, right?
EOS is very different than voice, right? If voice did its own voice token that they would give out to the creators who created it, you know, there was some, and I can remember the one time I did go and meet with Brendan and Dan, you know, at the Block One headquarters. It was like a wall of lawyers like that. And that's, every time I think of Block One, I think of a wall of lawyers and accountants basically managing lots of money. And they're very risk averse when you have a wall of lawyers. And
you remember the Block One Christmas card that they released a couple of years ago? That, you know, they were like, "Merry Christmas, everybody," and then they had the legal department go in and like red strike everything about it.
It's one of those things where, excuse me, where I feel like, is it possible many years from now, when all the dust settles and the thousands of projects that are in the space are no longer, because maybe the SEC starts cutting off the choke points to all the exchanges, and, you know, liquidity dries up, and, you know, they start, remember ETH Delta, it's gone. It was supposed to be a decentralized DeFi platform. So any of these interfaces might come and be attacked. I mean, who knows what it's going to look like in the regulatory environment. We know historically, when you go after a nation state's money, they respond very intensely and often violently. And so when we look at the space, and, you know, I wonder, is it possible many years from now, we're going to have a fully regulated exchange with $9 billion of liquidity because of the SPAC behind Bullish, and maybe, you know, there's some we get to stand and be the Amazon after the .com event, and all the other, you know, pets.coms are gone, and EOS is like, and we all just get to rewrite history and pretend like it was all great the whole time. Like, maybe, am I optimistic? That's why I'm involved in lots of other projects, because it's just like I've lost so many incredible, you know, we've lost so many incredible, talented, amazing people in the EOS.io space that have just said, I'm done. I'm moving on to other things. You know, so many incredible people. And I just feel like, can we undo that story? You know, from one perspective, it seems, you know, impossible. But then what I remind myself, 3.9% of the world is in crypto today. 96% are not. They don't have a story that matters to them. And if they go to a great user experience for a brand new regulated exchange like Bullish or whatever, and they get introduced to a token that they're excited about, like EOS, who knows? Can we rewrite history with a group of people like that? Maybe, but we'll see.
Well, I think you guys have done a pretty good job over in FIO, and I think Wax has done a pretty good job of separating yourself, you know, from Block One and from EOS, from the beyond public thing. I mean, Telos, maybe, I don't know. I like Telos, but like they're just too in your face about it. In my personal opinion, it actually hurts them from within our community, right?
Yeah, to that point, I actually met Douglas for the first time, actually in Miami recently, and we had a great 2-hour conversation, and it was phenomenal. He unblocked me on Twitter. I thought that was a big one.
You had that, right? Like Proton as well, like a lot of these, right? And I think like there's going to be, sorry, Chaney, I'll let you in a sec. There's going to be a lot of these projects that need to, that need to distinguish themselves from block one and what was done. So I mean, in the end, no matter who does something with funding, if projects are getting the funding they need, that's great. And if EOS moon rockets, or even if it stays the same and the technology becomes a core component of blockchain going forward, right? Like in my opinion, where block one really dropped the ball is like they should have had this Terra bridge that connects to all these other chains. Like with that amount of funding, you should be able to connect to every single other chain without having to rely on an EVM, in my opinion, right? But like as long as block one doesn't take credit for it, I'm totally okay, right? Like now they're selling their tokens or getting rid of their tokens, and as long as they don't take credit for it, like I'll still give them credit. I mean, holding BTC in a bear market was a smart move. If they then now diversified and put that money back into the ecosystem, which they never did, because Chaney kind of pointed it out. Now they're a holding company. They're not, a support network that we thought that they were going to be. Sorry, go ahead, Chaney.
No, I totally agree with Luke. I think we need a total rewrite. I want to clarify. I think Rock can do great things for EOS. I think he's got the history to do it. I don't think anybody's arguing that Brock can't do really good things with 45 million EOS. I think the only consternation in the community is like we said, B1 selling those unvested EOS, and vested is a term used in business and finance, and invested means earned over time. And those tokens have clearly not been earned over time. I'm not suggesting that we take those EOS away from B1. I'm simply suggesting that we turn off the vesting until such time as they're willing to come to the table. And going back to Luke's point, I think it is time to rewrite history. I think if the EOS Network Foundation, Brock Pierce, and B1 can sit down and come to some sort of resolution that totally allows for the final absolution of B1's involvement with EOS, it would be for the better of EOS to have that weight and that shadow hanging over us be gone. And if they choose to do something good for the network with Bullish, if they choose to do something good for the network with EOS.io Dev, if they choose to do something, that's their choice now. It's not an expectation of the community, and it's not something that other people look at and point to EOS and then to B1 and say, EOS, like Luke said, raised $4 billion. Now they've got nothing. No, there's a separation. There's no obligation anymore. There's no connection. Ties are severed. No legal requirements. They can do what the hell they want. And if they choose to do it, great. If they choose not to do it, we control our own destiny. We control EOS.io dev code. We're in charge of our own lives at that point. That's all I would say at that point.
I completely agree. In terms of, we would all be better off if B1 was out of the picture. Let's just let B1 become this gigantic business that might leverage EOS in some way and have a lot of liquidity in terms of EOS tokens, since we're cleared from the SEC. That's good for the price of EOS. What's not good for the price of EOS is for the BPs to do something nuclear, like changing account keys and removing tokens and giving them to the ENF or something like that, which I've heard thrown around. That's not good for the price of EOS. It's not good for the sentiment of EOS. I know a lot of people, I will sell my EOS if that happens. Like, I want anything to do with that. To me, that's defying. That's not allowing B1 to uphold their end of the social contract. They haven't yet, but they might through Helios. And I think we haven't even given that an opportunity to manifest itself. And let's give Helios a month. 1 month. I bet you they can do something in 1 month that might have us come to, okay, this isn't B1 and they're actually doing something. But the way I hear some people talk now, no, it's too late. Too bad. B1 failed us. I don't care about Helios. Let's just chop them off.
Jimmy, let's meet back here December 16th. See what Helios has done the last month.
All right, I like it. Yeah, let's do it. That sounds great. Who's in? You guys get first dibs. What's December 16th?
Like I said before, Chris, I don't have an issue with Helios or Brock One. I'm sure they're going to do great things. And if that's how B1 chooses to distribute EOS, that would have been a good thing as well. I wish again it hadn't been vested tokens that were sold before they were earned. But that's my only negative there.
It's fair. Yep. I mean, they were reserved. I think the vested thing is just a term we're applying to what the contract said. But I see
Luke, is vested actually? What is the language in the EOSIO code that releases it on a per block basis?
I mean, I don't know what the actual language is, but it's an interesting point related to that's the only contract we really have. But, you know, whether we say vested or not, it's what the code does. We can call it whatever we want. But the reality is these tokens get released to this account. Now, there is, you know, I'm frankly, I'm still a little bent that we didn't get the 4% to the worker proposal system that we were supposed to be, gotten from the very beginning. 1% inflation, 4% inflation going to worker proposals. Now we got 2% with the EOS Network Foundation. If the EOS token goes up in value, that's a significant amount of funding every single year going to EOS Network Foundation, which is controlled by the block producers. You know, the block producers get to vote who, you know, they vote Eves in and they vote him out if they don't like what he's doing, right? And that's back to the token holders. So I think that my biggest concern is, and again, I've had these conversations with Brock leading into him talking about this stuff. And it was like, you know, I've had conversations with Mike Manfredi about this and the Clarion team as well. It's like usability issues with EOS, which I think we fixed a bunch of in FIO. So I wouldn't even mind bringing some of those back. Like you don't have staking or resources or RAM, and all that's just behind the scenes. You know, more UTXO, you can send tokens to a public key and it automatically generates the account. So you don't have to like have tokens in order to create tokens and all this craziness. Just like, you know, usability problems. I'm all about usability in crypto. We have to be prepared for the next, you know, billion users that are coming to crypto quicker than any of us realize. And I think that EOS has some really big hurdles in the regard to overcome usability. If whatever, you know, projects focus on usability, I'm going to be excited about. If they don't, I think they're missing the boat. And so it's like, if we can't overcome that and we can't create a new story about how EOS is the most user-friendly, awesome project to be involved in, it's going to be very difficult. But I think for the first time ever, we get to see what this amazing community that's actually in it for the code can accomplish with money. We've never seen that. You know, they're in it for the tech, and yet now they're funded, and they've never really been funded before. So I'm curious to see what happens next.
And just to say one thing about this in it for the tech, I think we're in it for the tech because of what the tech can do in terms of manifesting itself in the real world. I think that's a key piece. It's not just the tech, it's what the tech is capable of achieving in terms of real world life improvement.
I got double checked. The code is called B1 vesting. Is in the code.
Yeah. I was just the contract says reserve.
Yeah,
so the written legal contract is
reserve. The EOSIO contract says vesting.
Just to clarify that when those tokens change hands, they'll still be vested. Is that correct?
For 7 years, yes.
Yeah.
It's funny, like as a programmer, I mean, I haven't been coding the last couple of years because I've been trying to lead stuff, but it's hilarious the interpretation of the variable names as a relationship to its, you know, social contract and on-chain contract. I'm like, holy frick, it's hard enough to name stuff. Like naming things is hard as a programmer, but I hear these conversations and I'm like, oh my gosh. Now I'm worried. what are people going to many years from now interpret from the FIO code, right? It's just like, wow, amazing.
Yeah, Amy Haynes he's totally in it for the tech. I totally see that. We know him. But yeah, that's I mean, I think that's a great idea, Chaney. So I've already booked it in the calendar. I've already tagged you in a group message that we're in. The December the 16th, we're going to do a roundtable on Helios now. Let's get back here and we'll talk about it, and we'll do a little bit of a review because I think that is a good point, right? Like we're early days. I mean, in this whole thing, we don't know what's going to play out. There hasn't really been that many press releases. So.
Probably need to send an invite to Brock, see if he's got 15, 20 minutes of his time. I mean, if there's anybody in the room that can explain what's going to happen with Helios, it's his vision.
Yeah, well, we're trying to get him. I think Luke wanted to test the waters and make sure we weren't throwing him into batting cage or something. But yeah, like I would love to have him on here. We're definitely probably going to have Eve on here as well. I mean, we did get a hold of Eve and he said, look, you guys are partway through already. Like, I don't want to interrupt the conversation. So he'll probably come back another time. But yeah, like what's happening in EOS right now, I think is really interesting to watch. Wait, I think you said 15 days for Pomelo.
Yeah, make sure you go out and look. There's a lot of good initiatives out there. I've already gone out with an account and made my donations, but I'll probably circle back around 3 or 4 days before it closes, because there are still people that are launching their initiatives. Remember, this is just the first round. It's going to be on a quarterly basis, so this is just round one. It's a test round. It's not, it's got some funding out there, and you can see already how $1,000, if you have a bunch of people interested, it can turn into $15,000, $20,000. So every EOS guys, if you're in support of a project, don't forget to do this. It's very important for their projects. A lot of good things happening right now for EOS. It's probably more positive, even though I'm kind of on the negative side here today, because I am passionate about B1's involvement with EOS. There are a lot of things going on that are good right now between, like we said, Pomelo, Eden, the Network Foundation, involved with that. There's a lot of subgroups that the pillars of the foundation is looking at building out, including advertising and things of that nature that should be really good. I do think the sentiment is changing. I think we're hit a tipping point, and I think things have been rough, and things will get better. But I don't think it's going to be fast. I don't think it's going to be easy, but it will be better.
Yeah, and I think once we were talking to Jerry and some other people earlier about like when the broader crypto community gets wind of this. I think when the broader crypto community gets wind of this and starts to pay attention to it again, that's when the real fun's going to come, right? Like that's when shit's really going to hit the fan. I think it's funny, Sorry, go ahead.
I would actually adjust that to say not even the broader crypto community, because again, mathematically they're irrelevant. It's when the larger financial institution community, the larger like global national brand community says, hey, we're doing something really real and significant with EOS and EOS.io tech. Like that's the moment. That's the tipping point. When you do something that becomes a household name, becomes a brand awareness thing that actually makes sense to people's lives. Like pretty much nothing in crypto has done that yet. Bitcoin is the closest thing. Bitcoin is like cool little speculative thing. You can make some money, right? But frankly, and DeFi is interesting, but it's still kind of fringe. But when you come along and you say, okay, here's the thing that you couldn't do prior to blockchain, programmable money, peer-to-peer digital cash, and all these things, and now you can, whether it's microloans or whatever, I don't even know what it might be. When we start doing something that actually impacts 1 billion users, when Brock talks about billionaires, like it's not someone who has $1 billion, it's someone that influences 1 billion users. When we start doing stuff like that, that's where this whole space becomes relevant, because frankly, it's just super early innovators right now. We're just getting started.
This is where
you're totally right. Sorry.
Let me just say one thing to that, because I think it fits perfectly. The idea of we're so early, and these 96% of the people who aren't even on crypto yet, and all these tons of businesses that haven't chosen to use any of their back end services or products or whatever that relates to a crypto, to a blockchain. James Mart was a late submitter to Pomelo. He has a proposal called the EOS Power Network, and that's to allow pull transactions on a base layer. Pull transactions does not sound very exciting, but what it allows for is subscriptions or when you have ongoing donations. No other blockchain has that yet.
Wait, this sounds like a FIO request that works with every single blockchain in the entire space.
They can relate programmable money, and how many programmable blockchains now have pull transactions that don't require an escrow?
Well, no, I would just want to say, like, that's what FIO request does for every single blockchain in the entire space. And this is our bad, potentially, of just not communicating well enough. You can do a FIO request, a peer-to-peer encrypted message, Diffie-Hellman shared key with a memo, works with every chain, every token that ever exists or will exist, because it's a layer above the core blockchain. The blockchain doesn't even know that you send it. And I pay every month I'm paying people through Edge Wallet. We eat our own dog food. Yes, it's exciting on the base layer, but I just want to make it clear, like EOS.io tech is already doing this for every single chain and token on the entire space.
How dare you eat your own dog food, by the way.
So look at that. Look at that project from James Mart, though, because having a base layer pull transaction that then other block, like any other Netflix, can now jump on the EOS blockchain and have subscriptions run through EOS. That's pretty huge to make EOS perhaps this financial settlement layer.
I can almost get, like, the Japanese are notorious for butchering English, but I can almost guarantee you that there's a bar somewhere down in the back streets of Osaka called Pull Transactions. I'm just going to leave it there. You guys can do with that what you may, what you will. I just think that it's, really going to be interesting to see, what you said about, mass adoption. Nobody's going to care about Solana or Terra, both blockchains, which I actually like as well, or EOS or Cardano or any of these hype chains. If, when the masses adopt this 1%, this 2% that are hyping all of these things now. I mean, and just, people who are out there, I think most of the people who are watching this are smart enough, but don't buy into the hype. If there's a token named Squid, game token, don't buy it unless you do your research, right? Like,
when I got an airdrop with a free token that I need to go claim. Wait, that's not legit.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm still getting spammed. This is like, seriously, somebody put together a Pomelo proposal for this, because like I'm still getting spammed with like buy your voice tokens on blocks.io, right? It's nuts. I have one more question. I'd like to actually, anyone is open to this, but I think it's a good question. So we'll end after this. Does being private chain hurt the mainstream acceptance? I actually think in a lot of ways, private chains might have to be a thing for the mainstream to accept a lot of these things. I mean, open transparency is really good for some things, but for certain like incorporation financial transactions, they're not. And I'll give you it can work. Blockbase is a really good example if you followed what they do, because like theirs are encrypted, they're private. It's not a private blockchain, but it's a private side chain that runs within the EOS network. That's my personal opinion. In terms of not supporting EOS token value, because Voice was a private chain running on another channel, I think that's a whole different kettle of fish. So I'm not really sure what you're asking, but if anyone else wants to tackle this as well.
I'll jump in real quick, and I got to go. I think that there's a difference between private and permissioned. I think those are important distinctions as well. As far as private, I think like with the regulatory conversation we were having recently, I think it's going to get interesting. We've already seen this where a lot of privacy coins got delisted, and so therefore their liquidity got hurt. So, I mean, as a freedom advocate, I think we absolutely need agorism and the private, sector doing their voluntary, thing that is not violent and doesn't need government permission. And at the same time, and this is more recent me, adopting this. And I know a lot of people disagree with me. Myself in the past would disagree with me. And it's the idea that we have to do the kind of play in the regulatory sandbox at some level, get good people writing good rules that we can follow that make sense, because really no one's doing that right now. So I think it's important. I don't think it necessarily connects to mass adoption, but I also think there's some cool projects. One I've heard of, Matterify. There's some others where you can kind of like check a box in your wallet buried deep somewhere, and maybe you get some privacy features, regardless of what token or blockchain you're using. So there's some interesting tech out there that we just have to, I think, be strategic about how we launch and get out to the world, and so that we can have the freedom that we need. But been a fantastic conversation, guys. I stayed longer than I planned because it was so much fun. Talk to you later, all.
See you, Luke.
Anyone else? And then we'll wrap it up for this week.
I don't think private chains hurt mainstream adoption. It's like this attempt to, so what, we have to apply a cookie cutter of blockchain to every use case. There's lots of businesses and there's lots of use cases, and we're only limited by our imagination. So mainstream acceptance is mainstream acceptance of crypto and blockchain. That private, public, ideally when mainstream acceptance happens, no one even knows they're using a blockchain. I want my grandma to be able to interact with the blockchain, and she's accepted it unknowingly. That to me is when we win.
I agree 100%. That's what, and I've always, being a connoisseur of many EOSIO blockchains, to put it politically correct. We feel the same way, that I don't care if it's wide open. I don't care if it's permissioned and, has its certain purposes, a different chains, we've got public chain. These are my terms. I tend to say like a public chain, a semi-private chain, and a private chain. and public is good for some things. Oh, okay, it's decentralized and trustworthy in theory versus a centralized thing, but it is like herding cats and walking through molasses to try to get everybody from around the world with differing views and whatnot, and so you can kind of get bogged down in the mundane tasks, as opposed to a completely private chain. You start to go, well, I mean, I like your idea. You're very agile, but there's one person that has the keys, and so you lose that. And then of course, like these semi-private chains where we're trying to find a happy medium between, and I feel like EOS is kind of shifting into, I don't want to call it a semi-private chain, but it's getting the ability to have an organization and to have funds and a structure, even if that structure is community controlled, to make movements and invest in projects. Some win, some lose, but we spent 3 years not able to do. The only thing we could agree on is burning it so nobody else could abuse it, and in a purely decentralized, that's always the easiest thing is, well, let's screw everybody because that's all we can agree on, versus ever coming to a halfway decent thing to try, so no, I don't think being one or the other will break, or is a guaranteed break of mainstream adoption. Mainstream adoption is when they don't know they're using a blockchain. They're sold that their NFTs or their NFTs or their tokens are their tokens. They don't care what chain it is. They may be using multiple chains, EOS.io, and the ability to have different chains kind of specializing in different things. Some are doing governance, some are doing NFTs, some are doing identity verification, some are doing payment bridging, the whole FIO and their layer. And hopefully now we're kind of getting back to either let's all talk together or even cross export those technologies and really ramp up all of us that have been able to, make some positions. But yeah, no, I don't feel it's detrimental for mainstream adoption. I think, matter of fact, being completely public can be difficult for mainstream adoption because you can't get anything that works, or you can't, okay, I trust you, but I can't do anything.
I will say I agree with both these gentlemen. It doesn't hurt in mainstream adoption. I think that probably in reality it hurts projects or some users in some cases that choose to go with private chains. For example, I was a supporter of Blankos. I have NFTs, but they only live on a private chain. I have no ability to take my Blankos and use it somewhere else. Same with voice NFTs at this time. So I think there's a restriction on value of my ownership.
I put that burden a little bit on the platform itself, because I've worked with other projects, and you're starting to see more. They can build a bridge and say,
exactly right,
which chain do you want to be on? Because you might get a benefit from doing it here, or like for instance, the stereotypical EOS versus ETH. You want free transactions, cheaper transactions, and things like that. Maybe ETH or EOS is the network that the game pulls it off to. Or if you want stupid ETH money, okay, fine, go over there, pay $500 to do a transaction. But and I mean, I think that that's very crucial to the mainstream adoption. The button in the game just says sell, right? So if you hit sell, you don't even have a clue, right? It maybe just goes to Ethereum and just does its thing, or play game, boom, it goes to EOS, and now you're paying, or EOS power up, and what, a penny a transaction a day or something, I mean, but abstracting all of that and utilizing the benefit of all the different chains, fine. You want to send an invoice to somebody for a sword that they're renting, use the FIO protocol, the FIO request or something similar to that.
So to my point there is that private chains, in a sense, do inhibit certain levels of adoption to the point where there is no full control or custody or care. It is not decentralized from the standpoint that you're the owner technically of your assets. You might as well just send your money via PayPal and trust PayPal to make sure that they hold on to your funds and it's in there secure, and you have no other recourse associated with it. So my point being is it depends on what this person's definition of mainstream acceptance is. If they're looking for decentralized governance and decentralized control, and that's what they consider acceptance, then maybe private, they do inhibit some of that process. You need to have, like Michael mentioned, some sort of connection to public networks to really engender a value in a full mainstream acceptance. Doesn't hurt things. It just people don't maybe understand that the benefits of decentralized at that point, because they're fully using private chains. So like I said, you can't send somebody an invoice if it's wholly on a private chain, except from within that private chain. So.
Well, if you integrate that private chain into the bigger ecosystem, which EOS.io tends to natively do it.
Amidst itself, but not amidst the rest of the crypto blockchains, which tons of other blockchains did. To not to be contrarian there.
Well, I mean, I would even say, when you talk about the private chain, for instance, Call of Duty, how many billions of dollars have people paid? Is that Sony or who whatever the whatever? And that is just as much of a private centralized blockchain. In theory, it's their system. You're relying on them. You're paying them. You ain't getting anything back unless they give you the option, which they don't. And we spend billions on these games. We're okay with it not being straight up decentralized. You know what they want? A game. They, and all you do is sell them and say, hey, remember that asset that you bought? And this is what I've talked to all these people, and they're like mind blown. And I'm like, exactly what you've been doing. It's just that gun or that helmet is an asset that can be transferred, be it on a private chain to a public chain, be it lives on a public chain, whatever. But that's
yeah. I like most people don't care. Ask mom, right? Mom doesn't care. Facebook. Sorry.
I was selling Diablo weapons in 1999 on eBay.
And that's exactly WoW and Diablo. That market started forming outside of the framework because people were like, I've spent a lot of my time and money on this. Somebody is willing to pay for it. Yeah. And so they found a way to do it. But you know what they didn't care? They did not care that Blizzard ran it on their own servers, or, even when you sold it, you were ultimately still locked into the system. And then you've got the dupers and stuff like that. The good days of Diablo. But anyway, most players, and especially, in my opinion, our society in the last 5+ years has really become receptive to playing games on our phone. And, we'll spend $5, $10, $20. I mean, God, I probably spent God knows how much on my, Princess, but that's an entertainment expense to us. And so we have conditioned ourselves over the last decade, so to say, to having an entertainment budget and being okay, and not even saying I'm not buying a digital gun for you, but saying I'm only buying 3, damn it. But mainstream is ready to take that next step and be like, hey, you remember how you've been getting wrecked from Sony for the past 5 years, and your son spent $1,000 and never got anything back other than, a bunch of time that you never saw him? Yeah. Take it to the next level. And you know what they're going to say? I don't care what chain it's on. Give me a button and let me trade it. Let me do something. Let me lease it to somebody or whatever, right? I mean, all the beauty that we talked about.
This comment from Sonata Systems.
It's funny because the macro is the exact same place that we started with. Give us a button and let us dictate what BlockFi is done with their flipping tokens.
Yeah. Well, this comment from Sonata Systems is exactly what you're saying, right? People don't care which chain. No chain, multiple chains. The masses don't care, and they should not have to. So that begs the question: what do they care about? The question we should all be asking ourselves is: what actually do users care about?
UX.
What are the benefits to the users? How easy is this to use? What are the benefits to me? What do I get out of this? They don't care about this back-end garbage. Some do. I mean, some do, but the masses do not. If they did, we would not see 96% of people not involved in crypto. So they don't care. So we need to be asking ourselves, how does EOS provide value to
whatever? Exactly.
And if EOS is successful, like the mainstream might not even never know the name Brendan Blummer. Like it's very potentially possible, right? It's a sad state of our existence as we, are here today. But
it's part of what's creating the hunger. Yeah, sad state, but sometimes difficult times create for much stronger dispositions and the ability to achieve far more in the future.
Yeah,
so look back with some trauma, but look forward with optimism and some lessons learned about what we can actually accomplish.
I like the word optimism. I'm going to use that for sure. Thank you. I think we're going to have to wrap it up because we've been on here for a long time, and I know I have to visit the little boys' room. And I know you guys are quite busy as well. But thank you, everyone here and everyone who was here in the comments and on the panels for joining us. It was great, and we'll talk to you guys next week sometime.
In a month, right? Oh, wait, I guess there's another call, but we got another month. We got a call to review where we are, right?
And in a month.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Let's do it.